Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. On tonight's episode, we will be reacting to what was an epic weekend of Champions Cup rugby. Leinster and La Rochelle played out another chapter in their storied rivalry at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, with Harry Byrne's last-gasp kick securing a vital win for his side. And then on Sunday, Munster went to the south of France, and as they so often do, got involved in a bit of a barn burner. They came out, unfortunately, on the wrong side of that narrow result, losing 27-25. But all in all, it was a really exciting weekend for both Leinster and Munster in terms of their contest. And it was a very interesting weekend for the tournament as a whole as we come to the last round of pool matches this coming weekend. So we've all that to look forward to on tonight's show. First, a reminder that Energia is a sponsor of the Left Wing this year, and it also sponsors rugby in Ireland at all levels at grassroots with the Energia AIL, and is official energy partner to Leinster, Connacht and the Irish men's and women's teams. The Energia Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion, welcoming everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. Find out more at energia.ie/rugby and avail of an exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans. Joining me for tonight's chat is Luke Fitzgerald. Luke, how are you?
I'm good, Will. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. And also joining me is Jonathan Bradley. We're putting back together the team from last week. Jonathan, how are you?
Yeah, good. Good weekend for rugby. So
we'll start with that game with the Aviva guys on Saturday night. What an absolute epic it was. Like Leinster 25, La Rochelle 24. Leinster 12-0 up. La Rochelle got a try just before half-time to make it 12-5. They start the second half really strongly. They go 17-12 up. Then Leinster hit back with 2 tries to go 22-17 up. Then La Rochelle hit back with a late try to go 24-22 up. And then Harry Byrne kicks that late penalty. So that's 5 lead changes across the 80 minutes, Jonathan. You know, it's funny, like, they've had so many good games, and obviously games that were higher stakes in terms of finals and a semi-final, but in terms of just like a contest, just the 80 minutes, I really, really enjoyed that, and I would put it up against any of them.
it was so good. I think it was all the better for it being somewhat unexpected. We sort of talked last week about how these teams have fallen off their peak from those 2 back-to-back finals a little bit, and we certainly weren't expecting La Rochelle to be as good as they were. I think whenever we saw the Leinster team, I think, to be fair, we probably weren't expecting them to work through that injury list in the way that they did, to sort of not be impacted, especially up front, by the injuries that we saw there. And just some of the individual performances as well, whether it be Botier or Lagarde for La Rochelle, or even, I thought the likes of Josh van der Flaer was really, really good for Leinster as well. And even if this was sort of the last throes of this rivalry, this could be the last great chapter of something that we've seen so often over the last couple of years. It was fitting in how good a match it was, how gripping it was, how many storylines were coming out of the game, with even 3 days hence, people are still talking about it ever. I thought it was a great game, great for the competition, and just a hugely enjoyable 80 minutes.
5 seasons in a row, a Leinster La Rochelle game has come down to like the kind of the last play / clock in the red / game alive on the line, like in the final in Marseille in 2022. Reterier scored with the last play of the game in 2023. Leinster were hammering away at the line in the Aviva at the last play of the game. You know, Kieran Frawley kicked that long range penalty down in the pools the following year just to seal that win for Leinster. The game was still alive. Last year, Leinster blocked a drop goal with like the clock in the red to survive in La Rochelle, and then this year, obviously, Harry Byrne. So that's 5 years in a row they've really lived up to the hype, and it was such a brilliant game of rugby. We'll get into the specifics in a second, Luke. But yeah, were you as enthused about the contest as me and Jonathan were?
Yeah. Look, anytime a game comes down, and like you could hear the roar in the Aviva afterwards. You know, I just it was a great game. I mean, look, there was loads of mistakes. But there was loads of great stuff too, like loads of brilliant bits of skill. You know, I think. I do think Leinster did get a little bit lucky, I won't lie. I think La Rochelle could have won that game quite comfortably if they'd taken a few very obvious opportunities, which I'm sure we'll go through. But it's great to get another win when you're kind of down on numbers in the squad, down on a little bit of quality. I maintain that Leinster will only get better as they get guys back into their squad. I'd love to discuss more about their defence. I think... you know, it looks more and more obvious to me that they can't do, you know, that defence doesn't work without Gary Ringrose. And yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that side of it. But everything else, I mean, they look very good going forward. I can't wait to talk more about it. I do think it was an absolute barn burner. There had those ebbs and flows in it that all great games have. And I thought Leinster did brilliantly well to survive it. I will say that, even though there was some disappointing stuff in there that they'll have to, look closely at. But gutted for La Rochelle, but obviously delighted for Leinster. It was like on a wafer thin margins win these kind of games, don't they?
Yeah, let's take the game chronologically, and kind of we can pick through the issues as they arose, and we can go through, because like there's obviously a lot of people are looking at the game and pointing out some flaws from Leinster, which I know is understandable, but I think they deserve some credit as well for digging it out, the resilience they showed, which has always been questioned, certainly by me anyway, and a few others, like in terms of how they lost some European games over the years. So I think the fight back in twice in that second half and get the win was very impressive. But Jonathan, like it started like kind of reminiscent of that 2023 Champions Cup final in the Aviva Stadium. Leinster just came out playing like really positively, really kind of crisply. Scored a great try in the corner from JJ Kenny. Had another opportunity then with the overthrow that Sheehan picked off, that La Rochelle survived that, and then a few minutes later got the block down try. Kenny in again in the corner. So within 10 minutes, there are 2 tries to the good. La Rochelle haven't fired a shot, just like in 2023, and Leinster are looking really, really good, and they're humming. And then the game kind of, like in 2023, La Rochelle slowly but surely started working their way back into. What did you make of that opening kind of half an hour or 25 minutes or so?
The start of the game, I think, felt like a continuation of how Leinster had finished against Connacht. I think we talked about how really since Croke Park, the team has built fairly slowly, but to the point where now they looked like they were able to add those attacking layers back into the game. And especially the first 8 minutes, it felt like just the continuation of that. It felt like this was a team that something had clicked over the last number of weeks with in an attacking sense. And it was really impressive. Obviously, like Joshua Kenny, an incredible story coming into this season, but the way that he's played, the way that he finished those tries, and even how important he's become defensively, has been a huge thing for Leinster, I think. And just to point out, I suppose, to focus in on him for that period in the game, because he scored the 2 tries. Like, what a way to make your European debut, 2 tries against La Rochelle and the Aviva in the opening 8 minutes. It really was an incredible start to Champions Cup rugby for him. And then La Rochelle have, I think, the profile to do irrespective of their top 14 form this year, the big game experience to do. You see sort of Skelton imposing himself more in the game. You see, Une Antonio imposing himself more in the game. As we mentioned, Bottia just contesting what felt like every breakdown going. In an incredible performance.
He's impossible to play against, isn't he?
Yeah, like whether he's center, whether he's a back row, he's
so dangerous as well.
Just an incredible player to watch.
Oh.
And it did feel like somewhat of a throwback in that sense. That was him really back to his peak. Just incredible to watch. And it felt like La Rochelle sort of absorbed those early blows, and then their big players came to the fore and just really sort of imprinted themselves on the game to get La Rochelle back into it.
Yeah, Bottia was so good, wasn't he? Like, he was like such a pest at the breakdown. Like, even in that period where I think Leinster were probably 12 up still at this stage. Like, Leinster had a couple of kind of forays in and around the 22, kind of from the 10-metre line in, and he got over a ball or two. Skelton disrupted a couple of rucks. Like, Leinster had an opportunity or two to maybe eke out a penalty or so, maybe put a bit more scoreboard pressure there, but they couldn't do it because La Rochelle were just so sticky at the breakdown. And the only black mark against Bottia in the whole game was in the first half when he made the big break and he had 2 men outside him, and then he was like, let's fly. He was really feeling himself too much in that moment, because you don't want your back row kicking the ball like that. But besides that, he had a fairly squeaky clean evening. I'm actually very glad he still got man of the match, even though they didn't win, because oftentimes they just give it to the winning team, and I'm glad. I think it was Ian Madigan stuck to his guns and insisted on Bottia getting it. But look, what was your perspective on the opening kind of exchanges? Like, Leinster started like a train. Like, even that first try was very well worked. Like, Tommy O'Brien takes a nice pass from Prendergast and gets around. I think it was Jack Noel, and then it was his hands into the corner, and Kenny's lovely little finish.
At the start of the game, Will, I think, like, unbelievable start by Leinster. It seems to be a bad omen for them, doesn't it? I thought, look, they took some of the tries brilliantly. I thought Tommy O'Brien was the outstanding back on the pitch for Leinster. I mean, he's just so he looks so quick, Will, doesn't he? He looks like powerful. He's great in the contact as well. A few great tackles. He's great at the ruck. Just love everything about Tommy O'Brien at the moment. He's a real go-to guy for this back line. I thought going forward they look dangerous. I still think they have a problem at the breakdown. I think they've got a technique problem with ball first, not body first, and then back. And I think that's why one of the reasons why Bottia had so much success at key moments. I still think they're having a little bit of problem around resourcing and their depth, figuring out who's going to be carrying and when they're going to be carrying and who needs to be in there. So they're having a few problems with that. And I think that's causing, against the better teams, I think they'll get stifled a bit, Will, if they don't get those two areas cleaned up. The amount of times someone fell, we used to call it falling long in a tackle, but then didn't kind of work really, really hard to get his body back on his own side. So if you think about it, sometimes you dominate a contact, Will. And it happened to Osborne at the back. Do you remember there was a very clear one in the first half where he runs one back and he actually wins the contact there, but he falls. We used to call it falling long. People who can't see me won't see me falling long, but you fall long and then they just place the ball back rather than really working your body all the way back to your side of the team. It makes it way harder for the if you keep the ball tight and working back, it makes it way harder for the poacher to get in, and it also buys your cleaners an extra second to get in and clean the ruck out. So I think Leinster have a big problem with that little bit of technique. I think if they get that sorted, it would really help them, and it would help Gibson Park, because I thought he had a difficult enough afternoon. To me, he's the key guy for Leinster. If he plays well, it's because Leinster are playing well. He's kicking well on the front foot. He's playing on the front foot with pace. He's got a little bit of space to manoeuvre, pick the ball out of there. He had trouble all day. I thought Bottia was outstanding, but I also thought Skelton, guys, was unbelievable. He was an absolute nuisance. I thought he got in the Leinster players' heads a little bit. And I want to talk about a wider issue a little bit later on. I think Leinster and Munster are struggling with their discipline. I think when the momentum's going against them, I think they're really struggling. They're conceding, getting a lot of yellow cards at times, and it's really not helping the team to kind of build any kind of momentum or stay on top of teams or even hang in there in games where they're on the back foot. I thought Leinster had a big problem with that at certain times. And I thought they were lucky to get away with a few, if we're being honest. The Bottia break, I thought, from the quick tap, I was going to send you the video, Prendergast. Oh my God, horrendous. Misses the tackle from the scrum at the start, which gives them the go forward. They concede the penalty. Thought Joe McCarthy actually could have got a yellow card from that one. Not his fault. Prendergast and Gibson Park make a complete meal off the scrum. It was a scrum like 5 or scrum 10 from La Rochelle's line. They missed that one. Then when they concede the penalty there, which could have been a yellow, Prendergast in the backfield, don't know why he's not in the front line, attention never be in the backfield, turns his back on the play and leaves them short on the short side. And I think it's, is it James Ryan or someone gets burnt by Bottia, but he overfolds then on the outside, makes a complete hands. And I thought they were so lucky not, that was a complete blow up by Bottia. So look, the start of the game was impressive. They had a lot of pressure. I thought they look, it's still in a good position to be 12-0 up. I thought there was some good play and they were pretty decisive when they had the opportunities. I think they could have been better and they could have maybe put the game beyond doubt. I say that cautiously after the 2023 final, but they could have gotten, there was another try in there for them, I think, and they didn't get that because they were sloppy at the breakdown at key moments. But it was a frenetic start to the game. I loved it. I loved everything about it. It was so physical. And I thought La Rochelle, for a team like what they do have, I think they might have an advantage in the coaching box. I think Donnacha Ryan might be a brilliant coach. We don't hear much about it. We don't see much about it. I think he might be a brilliant coach. We know Roger's quality. And I think they seem to be able to get the better of the Leinster guys a lot of the time when they play them. They seem to have a way of figuring out how to play against them. And I think when you combine the coaching staff and some very experienced heads that don't panic, that's the thing I think with this La Rochelle team. They don't seem to panic when they go down. They may have panicked against Toulouse a couple of weeks ago, but they don't panic against Leinster for whatever reason. I think it's because they have a very clear plan about how they like to play against Leinster and how they disrupt them. And I think they've got the perfect bodies in their team to do that. And I also think they've got the perfect bodies in this team to take advantage of that defence. When you have huge bodies, that you can't always put backwards, who can free their hands at different times, coming up as hard as Leinster do, if you don't smash the guy backwards, you leave yourself so open to little offloads and passes and little passes backwards. Do you know when they're almost at the contact area, they nearly hit the Leinster guys and they were popping one back to a La Rochelle player behind them, and they were really exposing Leinster players a lot. I think they're the perfect blend to really give Leinster trouble. And I thought they really were so calm after that frenetic start to the game. I was really, really impressed with them. I don't think they're completely a spent force, guys.
Yeah, I take your point on that, but Jonathan, it's a funny one. Like, as impressive as La Rochelle were, and as much as I agree with Luke, like, they were so physical. Their forwards, the key guys that we know well, played really well. Behind the scrum, like Legarec was phenomenal. Like Darnavuku, the Fijian centre, 21-year-old, like, was really, really good as well. Like, made a lot happen, but like, that defeat is catastrophic for their Champions Cup chances, just because it reminds me of last year when they played Leinster and played really well, and people were like, the Raj won't be too disappointed because they played so well and they'll see them again. That's not how this tournament works. They're going to be on the road for the entirety of the knockout stages now. Like, the performance really reminded me of France in the Six Nations against England. I thought La Rochelle were the better team for large parts, but they butchered so many chances, and some of them were inexcusable. Like, some of the missed chances, like the one where Redawardi and Hastoy ran into each other on the line. Like, that's literally like a walk-in try, and the prop goes to catch it, and the out half is running in, and the ball hits the deck, and they're just looking at each other like, how did we balls that one up? Like, it's a funny one for La Rochelle. Like, in some ways it was the making of their season performance-wise, but in other ways the result is so damaging for their tournament prospects that it ultimately was a huge missed opportunity. I'm sure Raj was fuming.
Yeah, absolutely, and that probably speaks to why he didn't appear to do media afterwards. It is really difficult for them because you end up in this tournament the way it is, that these games can almost feel robbed of that context because both these teams are going through. And we saw that across the weekend, where all the best games, so the 4 best games, involved 8 teams that are all going through regardless. But you can't lose sight of how damaging it is to La Rochelle, to Munster as well. We'll come to that later, of how damaging it is to be in that position where you're going to have to go on the road, because it's, especially when the competition is set up that the last 16 in the quarterfinals are back to back, because it's so hard to do that 2 weeks in a row, that I think it becomes almost impossible, I think, for a team to do that from throughout the knockouts, unless you are unbelievable and have had a poor pool stage for whatever reason. And I don't think La Rochelle are at that level. I agree with Luke. I don't think they're completely spent. I think we saw what they can get when those guys in their mid-30s still hit that level that we know that they can. There's still going to be a team. There's still going to be a match for so many teams out there because of the physicality that they bring, because of, just test level quality that they can bring with world-class players. But what I don't think that they're going to be able to do is go and win 3 knockout games away and then a final at a neutral venue. I just don't see that. So in that sense, I think they will rue this game. I think they will rue not even so much the end game, but just that they put themselves in a position where Leinster could come back into it, because they could have been home and hosed.
Yeah, at 17-12, you're thinking they're going to kick for home and probably get a bonus point win, and Leinster might leave with nothing, and instead they only leave with 1 point and Leinster get 5. Like, so that's a huge swing in the context of the pool. One thing I did think was funny, because people are saying like how like maybe La Rochelle got a bit tired in that third quarter when Leinster ran in those 2 really nice tries. If you actually look at the Van der Fleer one, it's Darnavuku, the 21-year-old Fijian, who is like, I don't even know how you describe it. He's like jogging lightly as Van der Fleer just runs down the wing, and he almost seems to just give up on it and just let him go by, kind of have a free run down the touchline. It's kind of strange. And Hastoy,
but it made you think that he must be injured, but then he wasn't.
Yeah, and then Hastoy was similar for the Henshaw try, just kind of like jogging and watching Robbie Henshaw run by him, and like he was a sub, like, so he shouldn't have been that tired. I found that kind of bizarre that the two lads, considering like then they went back on the front foot then and got another try, like, so they clearly weren't completely gassed. I don't know if it was an effort thing or a concentration thing or what. Because look, I did think Leinster, it was one of their best passes of the season for that Van der Fleer try. You know, we've been talking about the Leinster passing and maybe not being as crisp this season, but I thought for the first try and the third try, actually, the passing was really, really good. Like, they went through the hands, fixed their defenders, and Van der Fleer finished that one brilliantly.
Yeah, and look, Prendergast's hands were all over both, weren't they? Like, he just has great timing and delivery. He puts it right in the pocket for you and seems to be able to hold defenders. And I thought going forward, he was very impressive at times, you know. Like, he's great to watch. You know, I wish I was more positive on him, but, you know, I just can't be because of the rest of his game. But, God, he's a joy to watch going forward. I love watching him. And I think supporters do as well, you know. So, yeah, look, I think it was some of it was impressive, you know. And I think, you know, when they do get a head of steam up, they are hard to stop, you know. They still have that in them. I don't think they showed that at the start of the season, and we were all a little bit concerned about that. I'm still a little bit concerned about the accuracy levels when the game is tight. I think they could be better there. I think they should be better there. But when the handling is good, I think it should be an area of focus for this team alongside the rucking. I think they're so hard to stop. They've got threats everywhere, you know, and they've got more better players to be coming back. I do wonder about Ioane in the centre. That is one thing. I think he'd be better on the wing. And I think that's probably where he might end up when Ringrose gets back in, whenever that is. Yeah, watching that. And then where does Osborne fit in? Like, and then you've got Keenan to come back into this team as well. Osborne might be tricky to get back, I know, but this season. But I think, you know, there's loads of quality there in Leinster, and I was bullish on it. I think they look dangerous. I think that part of their game has definitely improved. The concerning part for them probably isn't the ball in hand, though, isn't it, from the weekend? I think the most concerning part is whether this defence actually can stand up to a team that has firepower. And I don't think La Rochelle have as much firepower as some of the other teams in the competition, by the way.
What did you make? So, yeah, why did you think they were punctured so many times? Like, what were you looking at and seeing? Like, what? Yeah. I
think it was a combination of I don't love the defence anyway. I think the personnel have some challenges around the personnel. You know, obviously, well, Lowe hasn't been unbelievable, but, you know, they do miss guys like that. I think they miss Ringrose badly. Like, Ringrose is a huge miss for them. If you want to get high up the pitch, and he delivers big hits, puts guys under pressure, you can feel him coming at you. You know, when you watch him, you know, you put yourself in that position on the pitch, you go, "Ooh, that was a crunching tackle," but also the angle was really nice. And he'd be nice that if you're doing this system, he's the guy you'd want inside you if you're a winger. And that's why I think when Leinster's wingers look a little bit exposed sometimes, whether it's a little bit of indecision or whatever it is, it's just not the same without Ringrose guys. And then, you know, I think the big bodies are a problem for it. I think this works perfectly for South Africa for two reasons. I think they've got big bodies. They're so physical. So they're dominating lots more collisions. And I think they've got their wingers have out and out pace. They have about 6 or 7 wingers who have out and out pace, who can get up high in the pitch and who can get back quickly if there's a problem. And oftentimes they'll be able to bail themselves out if the pass goes over the top. I don't think Leinster have that. And I think it's a problem for them if they come up against big bodies like Skelton. You saw how many times Skelton was in contact and he slipped one away, or he took 2 guys, he got over a gain line. Leinster then have to come back to get off the line again. It's very hard to do that. I think it burns your forwards quite a lot, and it tires them out. And I think, you know, you have to be if you're not coming off the line on it, and the others have a little bit of time to make decisions, I think they can pick you out, particularly when Leinster seem to, even if they don't get the pressure on the inside of the defence, the Leinster guys on the outside still come up. So that opens up loads of opportunities for you all over the place. And I think the combination of the big bodies, the indecision, it causes big problems for them. And as well, I think if you can kick well and put pressure on them in the pack, the combination of the two things, or the three things, you know, I just don't think this defense works against the better teams. Particularly, I think it gets worse for you on the drier days. You know, when the weather is better, I think it's been, you know, proven a few times with Leinster that this defense is very troublesome if you don't execute perfectly all day. Like, you look at their tackle. I was looking at their tackle percentage, completion percentage. Everyone was telling me for a long time that doesn't matter. It was 64% in the weekend, guys. That is not good. You're not going to win any game. I was going to say you're not going to win any games. They won the game, but you shouldn't win any games against a team that you have a 64% completion rate against. And I do think La Rochelle did lose that one, guys. They had some unbelievably clear-cut opportunities where they split this defence apart. And they should have been nearly out of sight once they got ahead of steam up. They cost themselves a massive amount, some huge opportunities. So that is something that I'm hoping personnel will help out, but I think against the better teams, the defensive system's a problem. And I think the problem at 10 is so evident. Like I think I'm losing my mind watching the games.
You say, well, like he popped up for tries 1 and 3 with particularly decisive attacking interventions, and you're like balancing the ledger and saying, okay, does that balance
Why
out?
would you but then you're a nothing. Then you're a net nothing. Like you're net. Like is that someone you want in your team? Like I look so right. A direct comparison on the weekend. Okay, look at Jack Crowley. Right. I didn't think he had a great game going forward. He had some nice touches. He did, for the
Nash try. Yeah, he put
the Nash try.
O'Connor through it.
Delay a pass. Right. That was a lovely bit of play. Right. But for the most part, he didn't do that. But he's playing in a far worse team, I think, in Munster. And look at the try save and tackle at the end. And some of the tackles he made close to the line. I would have him in my team every time over Prendergast. He's so brave. He's not a net nothing. He is a positive always on the pitch for you, because even if he's not going well in attack, he's going to hold up defensively for you. I'm amazed that the coaches don't think this is a big problem and that they think they can sort it out with the attack. Like to my mind, he pretty much cost the team the game on the weekend. Only La Rochelle threw away some absolute gilt-edged chances. I feel like I don't know rugby anymore when I'm watching it. I love watching him going forward, but I cannot excuse the other stuff. I just never pick a guy who does that.
He did have one good defensive moment under the post where he kind of contributed.
That was a nice tackle. Yeah, he's able to do it, which makes it even worse.
Yeah,
I have nothing further to add.
No, I think you said your piece.
That was a great tackle. So my point is, he can do it, Will. So you have to do it then, but you have to do it. You don't have to you have to get 8 or 9 out of 10 of your tackles, in my opinion, to be a standard player. 8 is a standard player. 9, you're very good. Because he's defended against difficult players at 10. Like you're defending first centers, 8s, these guys. But they're usually they're straight up tackles generally, and you have bodies around.
As you said, the one on Downavuku was pretty stark because, like as you said, it was a scrum in their own 22, and he goes through them and makes like 30 meters up the pitch, and all of a sudden they're attacking. Which is you don't see that happen very often.
I tell you now, the last thing he won, I went through that game. I was kind of forensic on him nearly in the first 30 minutes, and I texted an old colleague and I said, "Am I losing my mind? What the hell?" Because someone had tweeted me on Twitter saying about Prendergast's defence. He'd obviously just watched that tackle under the post, and I honestly, I was glad I texted the person because they thought they were seeing the exact same thing as me. Honestly, if I was going through that as a defence coach, I would absolutely be annihilating him on Monday morning, annihilating him, and I do it in front of all his teammates as well.
But opposing coaches are seeing it because obviously every team is always going to target the 10, but he's being targeted so much now.
Jonathan, the 2-on-2 for the scrum, the scrum, the try off the scrum, it's a 2. You would never go down a short side there with a 2-on-2.
Yeah,
you would never do that. Like it just
other teams are just identifying where he is and going for him.
It was never even mentioned in commentary. They went down the short side with the 2-on-2. Will like with 15 meters. Like that's basic. That is basic stuff.
Yeah, and yielded 2 tries for La Rochelle at crucial moments. And then Harry Byrne obviously comes on. Jonathan Prendergast goes to 15 and have the moment at the end when Harry Byrne kind of takes the ball almost from Prendergast and says, "I'm kicking this one," and he gets the moment, kicks the winning penalty, and it's another kind of twist in the kind of out half debate. But it was a big moment a huge moment for Harry Byrne, huge moment for Leinster, and it was a very dramatic moment generally.
Yeah. I actually thought they dovetailed quite well together with Prendergast at fullback. The link up between them up to that moment seemed pretty good. The Harry Byrne thing I think is fascinating. It was really interesting how much Farrell name checked him throughout November before he was playing the way, or I suppose before people had clocked that he was sort of coming back into it, because I think an awful lot of people, whenever he went to Bristol, had sort of written him off. So it really caught the ear how often Farrell mentioned him through November. We obviously know how much Farrell loves Prendergast as well. And you're always sort of trying to read the tea leaves with his press conferences. And I don't think he just throws names out there for the sake of it. So he was obviously thinking Harry Byrne was coming back into the mix here. And that was in November. I didn't see it so much as like a passing of the torch moment whenever Harry Byrne takes the ball off him, because I think there's still so much road to run here. I don't think that it will solely come down to who's the better kicker, obviously, either. But I think it says an awful lot about where Harry Byrne is mentally to take that on. Now, he kicked the one, he'd already taken on kicking duties before. But to have the confidence to go for it, we heard Caelan Doris say afterwards that he was the one saying that he wanted the ball. And I know that Prendergast will have wanted it as well, but whether it be he was the more forceful personality in that moment, or whether it be they think that he is the better kicker in general and gave him the kick, it felt an awful lot like the Ross Byrne kick, if that's not too simplistic a narrative reach, the Ross Byrne kick against Australia, where it almost felt like with one kick, regardless of how the starter had played and regardless of how the rest of the game had gone, it was just a real narrative shift on the basis of that one kick. And I think it's fascinating to see how this plays out 3 weeks out from the Six Nations, between Prendergast, between Byrne, and obviously Carley still there as well.
Yeah, I'd love to have had a mic on them and just heard the exact things. I know we've heard them say what was said, but yeah, Harry Byrne is a better kicker, I think. So I think maybe like that's why it makes sense. It wasn't just kind of hubris that he's like, I want the moment because it's my chance to shine. I think he is a better kicker as well. So I think it did make sense for the team too. It's funny how it came about though. Like the last minute from La Rochelle was about as bad a minute of rugby as you'll see, like in terms of closing out a game. They have the ball in the Leinster half with the clock at like 79:10. That poor sub prop Louis Pennerve, I'd say he probably was left behind in Dublin by Raj after like knocking on
the lippy.
Yeah, dropping the ball. Then like McGrath, to be fair, Luke McGrath, underrated moment.
Brilliant.
Like without him getting a turnover penalty there, they don't win that game. Like if Leinster are having to scrum from deep to get up the pitch, they don't win, I think. So Luke McGrath's kind of quick thinking to force the penalty. A great line kick as well by Harry Byrne. And then the prop, not content with merely knocking the ball on, decides to drop to his knees. And I've heard people say it was harsh. I thought it was a definite penalty. You can't tackle in that position. And then Harry Byrne slots the kick. So it was like a crash course on how not to manage the last 60 seconds of a game. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what did you make of that passage? Like, it was just like a kind of car crash stuff from La Rochelle.
Yeah, it was, but I thought it was quite composed by Leinster, and I think it's good that they looked a little skinny. And think it's not often Leinster look skinny, I think, in terms of the squad. But I thought the guys who came on were actually very good. I thought Deegan had some good moments as well. So yeah, no, look, I think they were. Like McGrath, like he's so nuggety. He's exactly the kind of guy you want to come on. He's got that belief in himself. He's so experienced and like teak tough to go in there and get that turnover, because he could easily have just let that one go, couldn't he? But brilliant bit of play by him. It's nice to get the recognition. And I think, having missed the other conversion, Will, which in fairness, look, it was a good effort and a tough kick, right? But to still look so kind of calm and stoic over the ball and then deliver with such poise that line kick and then deliver the last kick, very nice from Byrne. Look, he looks calm, composed and ready for the big stage, doesn't he? So, look, key thing for him is to stay injury-free, isn't it? I think that's certainly an ongoing battle with Prendergast, and you can see what Prendergast brings in attack, but there's such a difference in defence. And he's not even he's an okay defender, Harry Byrne, but that is such a difference to what you get from Prendergast. And Prendergast is, he just leaves you so exposed on that side of the ball, that I think they're going to have to pick him. Like, I don't know when it's going to dawn on him, but they're just going to have to pick him. They're going to have to give something up on the attack side, or at least give Harry Byrne more opportunities in a row to get the attack humming and get them used to how he's playing. But they need to find a way to keep him fit and get him in the team, I think. But I was really impressed. And I think the team did quite well. There was still a bit to do at that point, to have that belief, I think. I thought it was impressive. It was an impressive way to finish the game, having put themselves in an awful lot of trouble and got themselves in an awful lot of trouble with some pretty poor defence over the course of the second half. To have the ability to deliver those attacking moments, but also to deliver at the end. it's a good sign for Leinster, because I think they get stronger guys as the competition goes on. You have Porter to come back in, you have Furlong to come back in, Snyman, all these kind of guys. They make this team kind of stronger, a good bit stronger.
Yeah, I've written down here, to credit them for the guys missing from the weekend who would definitely be in the 23. Porter, Furlong, Snyman, Ryan Baird, James Lowe, Jamie Osborne, Gary Ringrose, Hugo Keenan. A lot of those guys, if not all of them, will be back in situ come the knockout stage. So they were missing a huge amount. And then even in the match, Paddy McCarthy goes off injured. You have Jerry Kerr coming on, a AIL prop to have to play.
He was actually quite good, guys. I actually thought he looked a little... I wouldn't say, maybe it's just a La Rochelle pack, but he looked a little undersized there. But I thought he looked really good.
He's working for Vodafone. He's not a full-time player, and he's going up again. I thought he acquitted himself very well in the circumstances.
He was excellent.
And then likewise, Kieran Frawley goes off injured in the first few minutes as well, and they have to do a shift around. And Jonathan mentioned how the lads dovetailed in attack, because they brought on Andrew Osborne and brought him off again to get Harry Byrne and Prendergast on the field as well. And it as you said, it contributed to maybe the tries they scored to get back into the game. So yeah, I wouldn't underestimate the kind of the fill up they'll get from digging that one out. Think about the circumstances of the Northampton game last year and how that ended with kind of a similar penalty in the corner, and there was confusion over what to do with it. Obviously, it was a lot more straightforward this time in terms of they needed to kick to win the game, but to see that out and to get over the line in a game in circumstances where they often have failed, I think will actually give them a big fill-up going forward. When with some players back, it'll be interesting to see what kind of difference that makes to all sorts of things in the team, defence included. They obviously play Bayonne this weekend, the final game of their pool stage. Bayonne are one of only two teams who are eliminated, so you're to assume that even though they're at home, they might not have a huge motivation there. They might not even pick their strongest team, so that could be an opportunity for Leinster to push their way up the standings. So that's Leinster La Rochelle. Now we will move on to Munster versus Toulon. Yeah, so Munster went down 27-25 in the south of France, Jonathan. It was funny, 7-6 at half time. There was no indication that the game was going to spring to life and kind of produce a grandstand finish, but that it did. Again, Tadhg Byrne, a yellow card from Tadhg Byrne in this competition again proves very, very costly. It's 6-0 to Munster when he goes into the bin. When he comes back early in the second half, they're 14-6 down. That's a 14-point yellow card, a 21-point yellow card against Bath if you include the 7 points he conceded for the penalty try at the Mall. So that's 35 points when Tadhg Byrne has been off the pitch in the two away games. From your captain, that's not good. And Munster really paid for that one. Obviously fought their way back into the game with some really well-worked tries. Looked like they were going to snatch it, and then that kind of contentious penalty call that a lot of people are honing in on towards the end to allow Toulon get over the line. What did you make of how things unfolded?
Yeah, I think across the first 40 minutes, even with Toulon taking the lead just before half-time, I think the most striking thing about the first half was just how much it felt like that game was there for Munster, and I think that'll be the most disappointing part, that they didn't make more of the first half whenever Toulon were really, really out of sorts in terms of their handling, that they couldn't get anything going in attack because they were just so error-strewn. And I think similar to Leinster, I just think the discipline is such a big thing for them. I think it's coming from a different place. I think Leinster's discipline issues, for my money, stem from the system and what they're trying to do in the system. Munster's discipline issues, to me, are coming from a different place, because Munster give away, I think, a broader range of penalties, and I think they give away sillier penalties. And I feel like you're really seeing the cost of that with those yellow cards that you mentioned. Tadhg Byrne, also getting that yellow card against Bath. Even going back, the card against New Zealand. I think he tries to do almost too much for Munster at the breakdown. You guys talked about it a few weeks ago about the captaincy and how that gets you that little bit extra at the breakdown. It doesn't seem to be going for him, but it's almost a double whammy, because they're not just losing a player, they're losing their best player and they're losing their captain. Sort of similar in the way to, I think, Joey McCarthy's cards are so big for Leinster because he's such an important player for them now, that it's the same with Byrne whenever they're missing him, that it's not just that they're down to 14, it's that what they're missing when he's off the pitch as well. The Nankivell yellow card I thought was a sillier one, but it didn't cost them in the same way, because obviously Toulon get the yellow card straight away thereafter. What I would say on the positive side of the ledger, and what McMillan had obviously wanted to see after what he said following the defeat in Belfast, the way that they hauled their way back into that game, because I thought they were done. I didn't see them getting those 2 tries to take the lead again. And so I think there's big credit there in the way that they got back into the game. There's big credit there in the way that they held on to that losing bonus point, which took them back above Gloucester. So that could be really important come this weekend. And the penalty, I didn't see it as a penalty. I don't know if anybody saw it as a penalty, really. We don't know how the last sort of 5 minutes of the game would have played out thereafter. So we can't say, that it was the game-defining penalty, but it was definitely a strange decision, I thought.
Yeah, it's being treated as like the worst decision of all time. Look, Tom Farrell is kind of standing in the breakdown channel. I can kind of see what the ref is saying. I think it was harsh, though, for sure. You don't.
But did you think it was given against Farrell rather than O'Donoghue?
I thought it was O'Donoghue.
Well, I watched it again before we came on, and it looks like he's looking at Tom Farrell and pointing at him. So, I suppose it depends on who you're. I thought it was about Tom Farrell because he says Tom Farrell backed into the channels and Tom was the one standing. Jack O'Donoghue's just on the ground being grappling. So
but Jack O'Donoghue got wrestled across. I thought he actually got wrestled by the Toulon player. It was kind of
I think it's Farrell. I'm pretty sure it's Farrell because he says you backed into the space. He says, and Tom Farrell is the guy standing up, but. I've heard this said already, but if we're all debating on who the person who's actually penalised is, it probably shows that it was maybe not a cast iron penalty to give in that situation.
Well, sorry, the only thing is, though, the O'Donoghue thing is extremely clear. The Toulon guy actually misses the clean. O'Donoghue gets on his inside, so the Toulon guy actually pushes him across his own breakdown. So there's like literally nothing he can do. If anything, the Toulon guy ends up like, but because it's almost like a maul because there's enough guys there. I don't know if you'd count as coming in the side, but it's almost like a side entry. He's certainly pushing across, and O'Donoghue falls across. And I nearly think that's what pushes Farrell into a bad position as well. It kind of ends up in a weird position where he's holding no one. But it's so clear. Like I thought the person who cleared the space was actually O'Donoghue and the Toulon guy that pushed him out there, and that's actually what cleared that space. But I thought it was an absolutely shocking decision to lose a game on. I actually thought they had a genuine gripe with that. The one thing I would say is they O'Donoghue speak like some of the stuff with the referee. They need to. Doris was at it as well. So was Sheehan. They need to just stay away from the referees. They are getting on the wrong side. The amount of people that were answering the referee back, interrupting him when he was speaking in both games. I think they really need to tidy up that in both clubs. They're adding no value. The referee's not changing his opinion, and even the mindset of arguing with the referee, like you should just be painting better pictures for the referee and focusing on that, and let your captain do the talking. But I think it's should be an area of focus for Irish rugby generally, but. The Leinster and Munster need to get better in that. They're aggravating the referees and they're not painting good pictures, and that should be the focus, not chatting to the referee or trying to change his mind. Have you ever known a referee to change his mind? Maybe one or two times ever I've seen.
Once I can remember. Roman Pot.
We're watching rugby for 35 years. So come on, just focus on your game and focus on painting better pictures. I have to say, whatever about the Tyke Byrne one, look, he's in there competing. You probably want him to be competing for you, but it is hurting him a little bit now. He needs to figure out that, that half a second where he lets go when he doesn't have a good feeling that he's going to get the pen, and it's hard with a guy like him because you do want him. It's like a bit like Doris. He'll get you a few key ones, and if you take that dog out of him, do you lose them if you're being a little bit more cautious? Jury's out on that, but he can't keep getting yellow cards. I thought the Nankerville one, guys, was unforgivable. In this day and age to be doing that was an absolute brain fart. It really put the team under pressure. And it was sloppy. Like we've been talking about Munster being sloppy. The performance that team put in the weekend, it deserved more. It did deserve. I know Toulon were sloppy, but I thought Munster actually defended the pitch very well. I thought Bernard Jackman made a lovely point about how they kind of filled the pitch really well, even when they were, they didn't look like they had massive numbers. I thought they filled the field very well and made it difficult for Toulon to break them down. Now, look, they'll still be very disappointed with some of the tries. I mean, the Alala Toe one is unforgivable. I just, I don't get I don't know. Is there hype there? I don't know, but I don't get it if there is. I didn't think he was great at Leinster, The scrum, in fairness, was pretty good against a big Toulon scrum, but God, he's a liability around the pitch, isn't he? I mean, that was like to be throwing the hands up in the air there. I thought was look. I think if you're giving the Farrell one, if you say that penalty, that last penalty was a Farrell issue, to not give the Alato one, maybe they have a gripe there, but I just focus on the game and stop looking at the referee. The game's going on, That was a terrible tackle to miss. Even his technique for the tackle, like he's down on his knee, trying to push back inside for the tackle. It's such bad technique. That was a bad one. And you combine that, I thought Crowley, he had a brilliant game, but he should have probably done better for the chip over try. I think it was
Drian scored it.
Drian or your man.
Drian scored it.
Yeah, his technique there. He should be giving him the touchline and trying to block him once he chips over. Like break his stride a little bit. Try and help your runners out a little bit. I know Nash should do better and spot the danger, but you need to bump him. Remember, you're allowed to turn and chase a kick. And if and you should always be turning and chasing into the path of the guy who's done the chip. Like I don't know where these guys, like whether no one's teaching this skill or not, but it's a basic skill. If you watch Crowley, he gets out of his way, whereas he's allowed to turn and chase. Just break his stride a little bit. If he does that, there's never an issue. So I thought there was a few tries that they'll look back and say, we could have done better there if we were a little bit cuter, or if Ala Toa had not tried to be so cute with the referee. This game was there for the winning guys. And even with all that, I think they got shafted at the end with the referee decision. I thought it was a shocker. So I think they can take something from this game is the only thing I would say. Having had a bad few weeks, look, you can hang your hat and say, look, if we get the discipline a bit better, if we're a little bit better on the on the defensive side of the ball, a little bit cleverer, we'll be a threat. Because they look good going forward, I thought.
Yeah, and it was crucial to keep that losing bonus point, as Jonathan mentioned, because it was something I was very critical of after the Bath game, that they haven't been good the last few years at accumulating match points to get yourself up the ladder to get better seedings and stuff like that. If they'd come away with nothing from that game, it would have been a catastrophe, considering how the game was played out. As you said, they were in it for a long period. I agree with you on the Nankiville one. You were never getting away with that. Case in point, in the fact that the ref didn't actually see it in real time or didn't call it in real time, but then still went back to get the TMO to look at it because it doesn't look right. Anyone with eyes can see that doesn't look right coming out of the ruck that way. He's never getting away with it. The yellow card didn't cost him on the scoreboard, but it just kind of feeds into the notion that their discipline wasn't great. They conceded 14 penalties. Leinster conceded 11, so even 3 more than Leinster, who we thought were very, very ill disciplined. The Tyburn, I take the point, Luke, because you can't be you don't want to be uber critical of him getting into the mix because he creates so much chaos and gets so much change out of that. But this year, in the last couple of weeks, the balance just hasn't been great. We mentioned the Bath one, the one at the weekend. The one that I thought was really poor was just before halftime against South Africa, when Ireland defend them all well and Matt Carley clearly says 4 away, and then he just collapses them all, and they get a penalty, they take a scrum, and Porter gets a yellow card, and a penalty try comes from that. So that burn penalty also conceded 7 points and a yellow card in that game as well. So I don't know. Yeah, you can't be. I don't know. You can't. I'm trying to weigh up how critical to be, because it is what makes him the player he is as well, getting in the mix. But can you dial it back for 10% and still be as good? Surely. And it'd be interesting to hear Jonathan's view on this one, because it's I'd liken it to the Tommy O'Brien discussion we had a while ago. Do you remember we were kind of saying, if he could just stay injury free, why does he have to go 100% into every single tackle? I mean, just go 95%. But I just think what it's very hard to do that. Once that little bit of indecision comes into your mind, are you then able to compete as well on the other things? Are we making any sense, Jonathan, or have you a view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I do wonder whether he does. I know Will mentioned a few examples there of things that have happened in a green jersey as well, but I do wonder if he does dial it back ever so slightly with Ireland, because the load feels more shared with Ireland. He's got better players around him. Whenever I watch him for Munster at the minute, in terms of maybe just trying to do too much, I wonder how much of that is down to the rest of the pack. The fact that Munster don't really have the horses up front, and that feeling that he has greater responsibility for Munster, I think, is leading him to contest that a little bit. We're talking fractions, because he is the best player in Ireland over the last 12 months. So it's just that little tiny bit, because as we say, he's such a loss whenever he is off the pitch, because it's not just the fact that you're losing a player, it's that you're losing your best player.
Yeah, and like to be fair, like his best performance, one of his best performances I've seen probably was in Croke Park for Munster against Leinster when he was competing for everything. Like he got loads of turnovers, he was in the thick of it all. So it's a balance. Like, but I don't agree with the notion that to say something like, "Oh, well, if you tell him not to compete, you're taking out everything that makes him good." Yeah, but there's a balance between like competing and then giving away penalties. Like the Matt Carley one against South Africa is the one that really kind of caught me because I was like, Matt Carty's shouting at him that he's in the side and he still collapses them all anyway. Like, and the one against Bath wasn't too dissimilar when like you kind of know as a forward when you're coming in the side. Like it looked pretty obvious on the camera. But Luke, I agree. You mentioned the scrum. Like there was a montage on Premier Sports just before kickoff of like Toulon scrummaging and mauling against Bath and how destructive it was, and that's a team that in Bath that really destroyed Munster. So I actually thought they fronted up really well in that regard because Toulon didn't get much change in either of those elements of it. Like I thought Dogbo, for instance, had a really physical performance. He got some really good turnovers too. So the line out, ironically, of all the forward elements, that was the one that kind of once again kind of caught them out. Like I think they had 64% line out success and a couple of crucial ones, like not like 5 meter line outs, but like there was a couple of relieving penalties they got, say that a 10 meter line, and then they just couldn't make it work.
It looked like they tried to do one as well, and I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been I'm trying to picture it in my head here. I feel like it might have been first half or
to the front. Was it like kind of they didn't jump?
But it was one of those ones where they tried to not get off the ground, kind of catch Toulon off. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That was a bit of a mad decision. You know, just calm it down. Go to a short line, and if you need, just like sometimes you just need the ball, don't you? You know, Casey was kicking it pretty well, I thought, all game. You know, they could have put that one up, put pressure on the 22, and I didn't think their chasing actually was great. That was one thing I didn't think Munster did great. They didn't get much ball back in the air. Now they competed for a bit, but they didn't. Thought the wingers could have and the wingers could have done better in the air for them. I actually think because there was some nice kicks up to compete. But yeah, look, in terms of the scrum, the scrum was very impressive. Like I'm speaking obviously as a layman, as we all are. But it looked very, very solid, didn't it? I mean, for a thing that I was thinking, oof, like this could be, big pressure and a big problem for them in the game, particularly when, like the knock-ons were kind of building up. You know, when it was a messy game in the first half, like when I saw that happen, I was going to go, oh, this is going to be the scrum where they kind of annihilate them, and then it just becomes a bit of a mess for the rest of the game. Never really transpired. Like I thought, Lockman and Alanato were there on the pitch. I thought they didn't work. If I'm being honest, I didn't think they were good around the pitch in open play. I thought they were a bit of a liability at times. But I thought the scrum was excellent, which is probably their main job, really, isn't it? So
there was a period in the first half. When there was like 7 scrums in a row in and around the Munster. Like Toulon kept knocking. Jonathan referred to it.
Do you think the
Toulon handling was shocking? Like awful.
I thought the referee at one point was nearly trying to like not give a scrum. Like he was almost going play on, like hope, and then there'd be another knock. I better go back. It was frustrating enough to watch, wasn't it? Because it looked like it was, you could feel the intensity within the game. You knew there was a bit riding on it for a certain amount riding on it, let's say. And you could tell both teams wanted it. Like Munster needed a big performance. Obviously, Toulon at home, French teams at home. You just know what they're going to be bringing. They wanted it to go well, but just couldn't get anything going. And it was a tough watch, I won't lie, but. Still, it was nuggety. It was aggressive. It felt like it was on a bit of a knife edge for large periods. It was, there was that had that to and fro in the game. One team you think were in front, and all of a sudden the other's back. So I thought it was a good game. I actually enjoyed it once it got into its flow in the second half. Very enjoyable game. And it was just obviously an incredible finish.
Yeah, well, one person's name I actually put down on my sheet as well was Dan Kelly, who had interventions for the second and third try, like that, like kind of pass back inside to Jack O'Donoghue, and then does really well for the final Munster try, kind of cuts back against the grain and throws a lovely pass to Nankiville, who then like gets a lovely offload to Tom Farrell. I just thought it was really good interplay between all those Munster players. Jonathan, one thing that actually jumped out to me, I've never seen this happen ever in a rugby match, and you guys, you might remember this happening. Carl Dixon played like a free kick advantage, which I hadn't seen, and he played it for a really, really long time. There was like an infringement of the line out. Toulon like played away for like I don't know. It seemed like they passed it a good few people. Then like the move broke down, and he went back for a free kick. And I'm like, I've never seen that. First of all, and if it is a thing, it shouldn't be going on as long as it did. I thought that was bizarre. Maybe I'm just misremembering it, but that really jarred me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it myself. It is a pet peeve in general that the advantage goes on too long, but. I don't know if I remember. I was doing the match for the game, so I may have been writing at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something I'd never seen. I'd never seen a free kick advantage given before. But
there was another one. Like, look, they had a few moments as well. I mean, the one. Do you know what I would like to highlight? I thought some of their attacking kicking with guys was quite good. They found ground a lot of time. As Evo highlighted, I thought it was a good point to make. You know, they got those kind of 2 or 3 bounces. You know, at times. Some of it was some bad play by Toulon, but some, like, they weren't even unbelievable kicks, but there were some smart ones. I loved the use of the grubber. They'd one bad one in the second half, but they'd some really nice ones. And they had that one that went through that would have been a 50-22 if Nankabel hadn't gone to grab it. Now, I could see why he went to grab, because, you know, they might have been through if he'd caught it, but it was a big opportunity at the end of the game to get a 50-22. But I thought they did that really well. And they kind of pinned Toulon back. You know, look, Toulon had most of the territory for most of the game, for example. But there was times when I thought they used it well. They used it as a good attacking weapon to put Toulon under pressure. And get their pack. There's a nice feeling you get in the game, as you guys have. You know, I don't know if you guys both, but I know you played well. Do you know that feeling you get where your pack is just moving forward? I always remember forwards talk. My old man used to always talk about it. It's a great feeling to be as a forward when you're tired, to have your out half or whoever your kicker is putting you moving forward versus the other pack having to turn, chase back, and then go and, you know, get a call for a line or whatever it is. It's just a different vibe to be moving forward a lot. And I thought they did that quite well in a game where their pack was always going to be under pressure, just, you know, purely of the size of that Toulon pack. I thought they did that well. I think that's an important part of the game. It's something that I thought in the commentary box they were talking about it, harkening back to, say, an older style of Munster rugby, kind of the O'Gara pinging you into the corner. I didn't think it was as snazzy as that in terms of the delivery, you know, those spirals into the corner, but it was very effective at times. And I thought it put Toulon under pressure at kind of key junctures in the game. I thought they used that well. So I think that was a good tactic.
Yeah, it's funny because when the commentator said that as well, I just went back to my mind's eye. The amount of times Rogers got the ball, opened his body, and just pinged a perfect spiral over the winger's head that bounced once and went into touch. God, it was just a thing of beauty back then. This really was.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you're the left winger.
Yeah, I can see why it was a bit of a nightmare if you were playing against it. So Munster this weekend have to beat Cass to stay in the tournament. Depending on results elsewhere, they might be able to sneak into second place in the pool and get a home last 16 game. But most likely it'll be a win over Cass, who are, you know, they might not send their strongest team, and another away game in the last 16. We saw
Cass can still qualify. Will
they can, but I don't know. I feel like they might still not send their full team. Like, they picked their full team against Bath last week at home and lost, so they might say, do we really want to go any further? Will we just turn our attention to the top 14? You never know. Maybe they will send their full team, but I'd expect Munster at home still to have enough for them. But Jonathan, the tournament's end up very interestingly now. Like on Sunday evening, Toulouse lost to Saracens, which all of a sudden puts them kind of a fair bit down in the seeding, which means they could be a real landmine for a high seed in the knockout stages. And kind of bizarrely, considering how much positive praise we always give them, they've lost their 2 away games, despite like picking strong teams in both of them. So they'll be kind of up against it to go and win this tournament again. And then we have a rematch on Sunday also with Bordeaux and Northampton, and Bordeaux looked absolutely unplayable. Like, you know, a full Northampton team, okay, missing Finn Smith, but they had a fairly good out half in Bellew there as well. And geez, Bordeaux put 50 points on them and kind of were at their leisure as well. Like they definitely look the class to me at the moment. What do you make of kind of the movers and shakers now as we head towards the final round?
Yeah, I really enjoyed both those games, actually. I think whenever you had the Leinster game on Saturday followed by the 3 games on Sunday, I thought it was really good for the tournament. The Bordeaux Northampton game, there's obviously so much added to the occasion just by the fact that they clearly don't like each other. I mean, we talk about Leinster and La Rochelle not liking each other, but those 2 teams properly hate each other. And it was great. It came across so early, but the Pollock try at the very start, and you're sort of settling in, you're thinking this is going to be unbelievable. And then Bordeaux just put them to the sword. They were brilliant. I thought some of the stuff they did in attack, obviously with Noel McNamara there. You talk about them being at their leisure, like some of the stuff they were doing, especially Penno, like giving tries to other people whenever it was easier to score for himself, was fairly mad.
Very French.
Yeah, very, very, very French. Jalabert is going to be a fascinating subplot going into the Six Nations over the next couple of weeks. Whether if Endemak comes back and whether they try and pair him with Dupont or whether they go with the Toulouse combo against Ireland. But I think Bordeaux obviously going to be the team to beat, the champions, the way they're playing. And the Toulouse game I thought was really interesting as well. Like they are probably a team that, if a team is going to do it going away, we talked about how difficult it's going to be for La Rochelle earlier. If a team is going to do it, Toulouse are maybe one of those ones that are capable, one of the very, very few that are capable. But they put themselves in a really, really difficult position. And obviously, when you're supplying so many players to the France squad as well, they're going to be coming into April fairly tired. The down a follow week in the Six Nations as well. So it's going to be even tougher for players as well. But yeah, I thought it was a really, really interesting weekend, especially those 4 games basically from Saturday evening through Sunday.
Yeah, and crazily, if Toulouse lose at home to Sale this weekend, now they're huge favourites. They'll be out. So like it's must win for them, and I think they can still get it a home last 16 game, but they're going to be away from home in the quarterfinals if they get that far. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch that one. Elsewhere at the weekend, we had Montpellier 33, Connacht 31. If you'd offered Connacht that before the game, they probably would have taken it, but not certainly with 15 minutes to go when they were 31-14 ahead and conceded 3 tries in the last 15 minutes to lose. They came away with 2 losing bonus points at least, but another disappointing defeat for Stuart Lancaster's men. They've lost a 17-point lead and a 21-point lead in their 2 away games in the Challenge Cup. They play Montauban at home in their final pool game, so it's expected the French team won't send a full-strength team, and they might be able to get a 5-pointer there, hopefully, to book their place in the knockout stages. And Ulster have a kind of a top-of-the-table clash in their pool against Stade Francais in Belfast on Sunday. I mentioned that they got the 5 points because the game was unplayable in Amsterdam. So if they win that, there'll be a high seed, and all of a sudden maybe it'll be more appealing than it looked when we thought we might more focus on the league. So, Jonathan, what's your sense of how the Ulster will approach that game on Sunday?
Saturday. It's an interesting one because I think throughout the weekend, whenever it was being talked about that the Cheetahs game wasn't going to happen, you felt it was really going to be detrimental to Ulster, because I would put them in the same boat as any of these other teams. Even though it is the Challenge Cup, I don't think they're going to go away and win 3 knockout ties and a neutral venue final in Bilbao. So it's very important that they do get home through the knockouts. I think Stade are going to be really difficult. I think we saw the way that they played against Exeter. I think they will come with an amount of intent that we don't see from every team in this competition, certainly. And I think it's going to be a really good test for Ulster of where they're at. Should possibly have Stockdale coming back in, which would be a massive help. And I'm really intrigued to see the way some of those younger players in the pack that have been playing well recently would go up against the Stade Francais pack. I think it's going to be a really good test. So I think it's unfortunate for a lot of those guys that were due to play in Amsterdam, because I think they're not going to get their chance against Stade Francais, because I think it will be the frontliners coming back in and try and have a real crack at this competition, because I think they might as well. They've rotated for the Cardiff game. They weren't going to play their full team against the Cheetahs, but I think this is probably now where it gets serious for them.
Yeah, well, another game to look forward to next weekend. That's all we have time for on tonight's episode of the Left Wing Podcast, sponsored by Energia. Big thanks to Luke and Jonathan for joining me. We'll be back next week to review the final round of European pool action. Until then, thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.